Hello and welcome to Brilliant But Lazy. I am Alan.
I'm Josh, and we're going to be talking about the Marvel Disney Plus content that ended 2023 and kicked off 2024.
Yeah, we are the pop culture nerd centric podcast here on the Victims and Villains Network. We're going to deep dive into our thoughts on What If Season 2 and Echo, both of which were breaks from the norm for Disney Plus Marvel series. So
hmm
before we get into that, Josh, how you been? How are your holidays?
They were good. I've been busy. We got hit with some crazy snow over the last week twice. So the most snow we've gotten in years. And so I've kind of been trapped inside my place for a while. But it's been good. Yeah. Having a good time, relaxing, hitting up the gym. Um,
Nice.
yeah. Yeah. How about you?
Very relaxing summer, winter break. Went back to work a few weeks ago, and things are just starting to kick off for me with the semester starting. So it's going to be an exciting time. I'm teaching my first college course in podcasting as part of it. So it's going to be an
Yeah.
exciting time. So yeah,
I'm
we're
jealous of every student that gets to experience Professor Allen. I would love
yes.
to
Uh,
sit in and audit that class.
who knows? Maybe I will even show them this clip from the podcast so they can know how jealous you are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. There's a lot of exciting things to talk about from the two shows that have that Disney and Marvel have released in the last few weeks. So without further ado, um, let's dive into the multiverse and talk about What If Season 2.
Yeah.
Um, this was a bit of a different. This was a very bizarre release pattern for What If Season 2. It was an episode a day for 9 days, um,
Yeah.
which which for me, being on winter break during this time, was fantastic. I would wake up in the morning, get my cereal, get my coffee, sit down and watch today's What If.
hmm
What did you
hmm
think of the What If release schedule?
I mean, it was interesting for sure. I was a little distracted that week, so I kind of like, oh, I there's two or three that I can catch up on today. So that was kind of nice. I don't know necessarily why they released it that way, and you would think it'd be other if you were gonna do daily, like 10 days of Christmas or something like that.
Yeah,
There's other ways to do that, or leading
it
up into yeah, I don't know. There's a weird release schedule for me, but yeah, I mean, it made me wonder why, because we've had those discussions in the past about Netflix dropping everything at once versus Disney Plus or somebody else doing it weekly so that they can gain, you know, uh, more talks throughout a
mhm.
month or something like that. So I'm not sure why they did this, but yeah, it was
it
interesting for sure.
if I had to guess, the fact that they released them all in the month of December really seems like, oh, for tax purposes, because we were supposed to release this earlier in the year, we need to get this all out by New Year's. So we're just going to do it this way and make it a holiday themed marketing campaign and just get them out before the new year.
Quite possibly.
Which, in a world where movies get canceled and shelved for tax reasons, I much prefer the "oh, we need to get this out as quickly as possible"
Yep,
method over "we're never going to see Batgirl."
it's
Um,
very true. It's very true.
so that's my theory. Um, but yeah, I. That being said, if they're going to do it over breaks like that, I'm fine with it. Like, it worked out wonderful for me. Um, we're not going to deep dive into every episode. We can just do we want to just go through each episode and give like little like different thoughts on it and just things that we remember, because it's been a while now since we've watched, at least since I've watched them. Um,
hmm
so do you want to just go through
Yeah,
episode
sure,
by episode?
sure.
And we'll give our brief thoughts on everything. I think maybe before we do that, do we want to do our ranking of the season? Do we want to give it its title of brilliant or lazy?
Yeah, yeah. What would you rank?
I
What if season two?
I'm gonna say brilliant, but there's a few things that we'll get into with this season that I really enjoyed, and there's some things that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know if I needed that much of this, um, but I
Yeah,
get it.
I would agree. I would agree. I feel like season one was great. Had a little more variety to it. Had some connecting tissue that led up to the finale. And I think this one, I mean, it still looks great. It was still fun, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
stuff like this, you know, it makes me, go back to my Saturday mornings, as a kid with some fantastic animated stuff. And, it's a new age, it's a new animation style, but it's certainly fun. And it's fun because it's plays off, the MCU that we've grown to cherish over the
Hmm.
last, decade plus. So I still had a good time with it, but I'd agree, brilliant, but because I think some things were overused
Yeah.
and not as much variety in this season as previous.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Let's talk briefly about each episode. Episode one: What if Nebula joined the Nova Corps? This was pretty much an animated version of Marvel's Blade Runner, and I was here for it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I loved this. And I was like, if this is what the season's gonna be like, let's do it because this could easily, I mean, yeah, it was Blade Runner. It was so much just that certain style of dark futuristic detective,
Hmm.
and it was violent and it was murderous, and the twists and turns. I really liked it. I think it may be my favorite episode of the season, and I was like, this is a strong way to start because it's great for the character, it's great for the setting. I liked the story a lot.
Yeah, I like that they were able to take inspiration from other material and bring it in, like looking at Blade Runner and using that as a baseline of this is what
Oh
the
yeah.
story is going to be. Like that, I
Hmm.
wish there was more of that in this season, but this was such a
Hmm.
great episode, and I think Nebula is already such a interesting character, and I really like what If has done with her between this episode and then the Star Lord T'Challa one from season one. I think they get to play with her a lot, and it's been very interesting to see what they do with Nebula. Um,
Yeah. Considering our first taste of Nebula in the MCU with Guardians 1. I mean, she could have easily been a one and done throwaway character, and
mm-hmm.
and to see, I mean, I think the Marvel, especially with their villains, they tend to have some really good villains here and there, and then they just die in one movie or something like
Yeah.
that, and you wish they could have developed more. And Nebula as a character is definitely an example of keep developing over time, and I think James Gunn definitely was a major part of that. And I love seeing this version of Nebula. I love seeing the version of Nebula we have in live action, and I want to see more of her. I've loved that she's developed this far and become a favorite.
Episode two then was What If Peter Quill Attacked Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
much the 1980s version of the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Which this was a very fun episode. It was it does what If does best in the comics, which is what if these things what if like this is the most basic what if plot I think of the season. Like let's take an idea from the films and just move the timeline around. Like let's have Peter
Yes.
Quill go back to
Yes.
Earth as a kid in the 80s and show you what Ant-Man, Hank Pym and Goliath and
Yes.
T'Chaka, Black Panther and like
Right. What superheroes did we have in that time that Fury was forced to pull together? Yeah, it's an
yeah.
interesting team for sure.
It wasn't even Fury,
Yeah.
it was Howard Stark.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. It was Howard Stark. Yeah. Hmm.
So
I What'd you
having
think of?
no, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. I like having older Black Panther. I liked having Hank Pym. What'd you think of him being Ant Man in this versus the Ant Man of our day?
I think it's very like they've done a great job with casting these roles because they did the de-aging of Michael Douglas in the first Ant-Man movie, and it's like,
Hmm.
I if they made this in the 80s, I could see that. Like he would have been a good Ant-Man. And like being able to do it in animation and show you what that would have looked like, I think is fantastic. The part that I really wish we got to see in live action though was Lawrence Fishburne's Goliath. Like he
Oh yes,
like
yes.
such like I forget like even Lawrence Fishburne forgets that he was in the MCU because he
I know.
talked about joining it, but it was like, wait, no, you were in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like that counts.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that was a nice. When they brought him back, I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, and now he's big and he's doing the big thing, and yeah, I liked that callback. It
and,
was minor, but it was fun.
yeah, and then you have Kurt Russell coming in too. Like
Hmm.
they pretty much anyone they've de-aged has been like, oh yeah, I'll come back and play a younger version of that where you don't have to put the dots on my face. Like let's
Yeah,
do that. But I really
and I
like the
liked.
yeah. Go ahead.
I liked Hank Pym being like a kind of Iron Man esque for that team, where
Mm-hmm.
he's brilliant, he's smart, he's an asshole, he's a dick, and then I can't help but also think of when he was kind of villainous in season one, and seeing if that transferred over to this storyline at all. I know it's a different story and
Yeah.
everything, but yeah, he had some edge to his character that I liked.
Yeah, and what I really liked, and I didn't even think about when I saw this episode, was Peter Quill and Janet Van Dyne would be about the same age. So bringing having
Mm,
their dynamic was very interesting because those are two characters you don't think about ever interacting, but they do in this,
yeah,
and it makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
I think my favorite part of the episode though is Thor just coming in at the end and being like, "Hey, what's going on here?" and just like assembling the Avengers to help to like fix everything that Ego has done across the universe. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, I enjoyed this episode. On Christmas Eve, we got "What If Happy Hogan Saved Christmas," and I'm going to say this now. This was my favorite episode of the season
Yep. I mean,
because, yeah,
animated Die Hard was definitely fun.
animated Die Hard. You got Sam Rockwell back as Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2.
Yes.
You got him dancing because if Sam Rockwell's on in a thing and not dancing, something's wrong with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you brought in some of my favorite characters. You brought in Happy Hogan, who I think is got a lot of time to shine in this season and in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Darcy Lewis came back for this one, and she's still an intern. Um, and like it was a story about Avengers Tower that didn't require the Avengers to be there.
Yep.
This is a very fun episode. This is going to go on my list of Christmas things from Marvel that I watch every year because I did watch the Guardians Holiday Special again.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a lot of fun, a lot of great callbacks to Die Hard, and yeah,
Yep.
that's
I love the cameos. I again, yeah, it's a good example of them bringing somebody's voice back for a very small thing, but it works, and I imagine with today's tech, it's not even that hard for them to be like, find a sound booth, pop in, and record these things for us. Like
yeah,
it's not even, it's. I mean, I imagine it's probably the most affordable thing that they did this season was just having them record it somewhere and then send them the file. But it was, yeah, it's definitely fun. I love the you could do a side by side comparison for some Die Hard things in there. I
yeah.
love the Happy getting the serum and what that did to him and his reaction to that, and yeah, it was fun. It
Oh
was a
yeah,
good
if
episode.
that's not the build a figure for the next phase of what if build a figures, like come on, like I've got the Watcher here behind me from the first phase. If
Mm-hmm.
that's not the build a figure, then what's the point?
Oh,
Um,
I feel like it has to
my
be.
my
Yeah.
fa- my favorite aspect of this episode though is like of the six Avengers, you have three of them actually come back to voice their parts in this, and each one of them has
Mm-hmm.
one or two lines. So it's
Mm-hmm.
Hemsworth, it's Jeremy Renner, and it's Mark Ruffalo. Like, and they're just there for a gag, and that's it. Like the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
time, the ones who actually get lines are the replacement actors who voice them on the shows.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which I thought was like that's dedication to show up for like one line. But it's really just like like 20 lines throughout a bunch of episodes, I guess, like one session.
But
Um,
Jeremy Renner has a full recording studio in his house, so I
yeah.
guarantee you it wasn't that much of a problem for him to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. And it probably gave him work while he was recovering from his
Mhm.
accident last year. So
No, he just released a music video and
yeah,
it showcases his recording studio, and I'm like, oh wow, he's got a full setup
he
there. That's
he's
nice.
back he's back to work and fully recovered. Working on season 3 of Mayor of Easttown in Pittsburgh right now. So
Hmm.
um, moving on to episode 4, what if Iron Man crashed into the Grand Master? This was originally supposed to be an episode from season 1, but got delayed for reasons. But we got to see the Gamora from this episode in the season
Hmm.
1 finale. So another fun episode. Like it does what I like What If doing, which is let's take something from the movies and do a actual what if from that storyline. So this
Oh
is
yeah.
what if Tony Stark got sucked to Sakaar after the Avengers and that portal that he fell through closed. Um,
Hmm.
you got Jeff Goldblum in here. You've got Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie again. Um, I thought this was a very fun episode showing what Tony Stark is like outside of Earth, outside out of his element. Um, this would be a story that I would like to see in live action. I think
Oh yeah.
they do a really good job of understanding the Tony Stark character in this. So
Yeah, and it was fun. The Grand Prix stuff was just it's just cool, inventive stuff. I thought that was neat.
yeah,
Uh, I know people are like with all these cameos and the MCU actors coming back to voice. I'm sure there's people who are like, oh, it would be neat if Downey Jr. came back to voice Tony Stark, but um, Mick Wingert, the guy that voices him. I think he does a fantastic job. I
hmm
think matches the vibe. Sometimes you get those animated versions, and you're just like, no, this is a choice. This is a choice to be different from the live action persona that we've seen. And no, I think he's great in this role, and he does it well, and it's not so jarring, even though it's not Downey Jr. So
yeah.
yeah, I like him a lot.
Um, episode 5 was what if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper, which was a sequel
Mhm.
to the Captain Carter episodes from season 1. Um,
Yes.
showed it did like a mixed match of a bunch of different movies from the MCU. So it had a little bit of Winter Soldier, a little bit of Black Widow, and what was the other one? There was a third one, and I'm blanking on it.
Um,
Civil War.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I. This is where the season started to lose me a little bit. Like, I
Mhm.
like the original. I like the idea of the Captain Carter character. I don't want to keep like if we do one episode with Captain Carter a season, I'm fine with that. If you want to tell a story with that character, go for it. But I feel like they relied on her too much later in the season that it kind of affected how I thought of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, just think about all the Captain Carter stuff we've got. Between What If, with Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. I mean, we've got a healthy portion of Captain Carter, and it is interesting what they do around her character in this season. But at some point, it was like, okay, we're getting a lot. We're getting a lot of this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do we? How much Captain Carter do we really need? And yeah, it was just like, I mean, okay, she's the favorite of the season. um, but yeah, I was just thinking we're getting a lot of this, and this is what I kind of meant by variety, because What If is just this Pandora's box of just different takes on things, and there were
Yeah.
some episodes of season one that was straight up just re reshooting something that we'd seen in live action, but with a different person, especially with the Captain Carter episode. And some of those things were neat. I don't necessarily need shot for shots remakes like that, but like uh between some of the stuff they did with Captain Carter compared to the Nebula episode was just so starkly different and creative, and I just, I want more of that, especially if we're only going to get 9 episodes in a season. I'd love more variety than continuing on with the same character as much as we did. And so it wasn't a terrible episode, but it was the start of this Captain Carter theme throughout the rest of the
Yeah.
season.
Um, that being said, like it was fun seeing like the events of Black Widow from a different point of view. I appreciate the this is what happens later on in the timeline after this initial what if. Like I like
Mm-hmm.
exploring the timeline further on. Like you still have the Avengers defending New York in 2012. You still have uh, the Triskelion in DC. You still have the Black Widow organization. Like I like that you can explore those different aspects of a timeline. And I think it's an interesting idea to do that timeline with Captain Carter. I would like
Mm-hmm.
to see it with different timelines though too. Like show me what the 80s Avengers is like in the 90s. Like show me how
Mm-hmm.
time progresses with that.
Oh,
So hopefully we get some more of that. Episode 6 was what if Kahori reshaped the world. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is
yes.
this is an original what if character. A Mohawk woman ventures into the waters of the Forbidden Lake to help save her people.
Okay, so I didn't do research into this, so
Mm-hmm.
this is not based on any pre-existing
As far as
stuff.
I understand, she was an original character for this show.
Okay.
Um, Voiced by an actress we'll be talking about here in a bit, Devry Jacobs, who played Bonnie in Echo. Um,
Oh, I didn't
yeah.
make that connection.
Um, I thought this was very well done. This was a very interesting episode. Um, very different dynamics than the other ones because it's the biggest stretch for the what if concept. It's what if the
Mm-hmm.
Tesseract fell to Earth like 2,000 years ago and
Right.
affected this native tribe, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is very different. It's a very Fountain of Youth storyline. Um, yeah. What did you think of this one?
I really liked it. I thought the animation was really cool with what they did with some of the scenes, the different power sets that came from the Tesseract and in this storyline, the alternate kind of um is technically an alternate universe where the people go, and then she chooses to go back to reality because her people are under attack. It was very, it was Pocahontas inspired, but is a cool take on it. And I just, yeah, it was the villains were vicious, and the power set was cool, and just seeing this super powered uh, Mohawk woman just, speeding through the forest, and the blue glow and everything. It was neat. It was really neat. I I really liked her power set and how just badass she was. And
Yeah.
then I think what is it? It's like some a cannon gets the better of her or something like that, and then we see the cavalry come in, and I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really neat. It was a cool episode. It was definitely different because, yeah, you get the sense real quick that, oh wow, they're this is a completely, separate story. This isn't gonna have like a weird cameo shoehorned in. It's definitely like its own thing in the middle of this season. And it was yeah, it was really neat. It was fresh. So I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the characters at the end going to Spain and being like, "No, like we live there. Stop it." Like that like
Right.
as a concept alone was a great way to end it and very
Oh yeah. It definitely
MCU-esque.
continued that story. Yes.
Um And this is where we started to see the connecting fibers for what was going to become the finale with
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Strange Supreme coming in,
Mm-hmm.
um, which we'll talk about here in the finale. Uh,
Yep.
Episode 7 was What If Hela Found the Ten Rings, which was pretty much
Mm-hmm.
the story of Thor and Shang-Chi combined into one. You
Yes.
had Hela getting exiled to Earth in the same way Thor did in the first Thor film, and then meeting up with the Mandarin.
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
this is the stuff that I really liked because, again, going back to season one, you had you basically had the Captain Carter storyline was scene for scene, a lot of it with Captain Carter versus Steve Rogers, and that was neat. It had a bigger finale that was definitely crazy and fun to see in animation, but initially it was scene for scene, and seeing that here, but in a slightly different time and with different characters, and then bringing in the Shang-Chi lore to it. Oh, it
yeah,
was a neat combination of Asgardian lore and Shang-Chi lore and just all that stuff. I thought that was really neat.
I think my favorite aspect of this one was they were like, we have this idea for an episode about Hela, but we don't want to do it unless we can get Kate Blanchett back. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." So they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yes, let's go full steam ahead on this one." Because
And then
Hela
her
Hela
and
Hela as a character was very interesting to see in this dynamic where she's not
yeah,
necessarily the villain like she was in Ragnarok.
yeah,
Odin's more of the villain in this.
yes, yes, because he comes crashing into to whatchamacallit, the land and
Yeah,
everything, and yeah, I did like how the characters shifted. I thought that was cool. Um, her relationship with what's his name that has the 10 rings was really interesting. I'm blanking on his name. Who who I mean they paired him up pretty
yeah.
well, and then that kind of continues on as well. Uh, I thought that was an interesting pair up between those two that I didn't necessarily see coming, and yeah, I thought that was Winwoo, and I thought that was
Yeah.
just cool to see them go that direction. So yeah, I liked it a lot. 'Cause
Um,
they were like a full on couple
yeah.
by the end of that. So and then that kind of continues on into a different another episode, and I was like, wow, they really went all out for that.
Yeah.
So it was a good retelling and a mismatch of two different stories.
A
So
power couple, if you will. Um,
definitely a power couple, yes.
and then we had the penultimate episode. What if the Avengers assembled in 1602, which saw Captain Carter going back to the 1600s to help uh, the Scarlet Witch and Thor and all the Avengers try to figure out what's going on with their timeline. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
I,
as a
I know this is
concept,
based on a
yeah,
comic, but
yes,
did you read the comic that this is based on?
I
Well,
have
it's
read the
not based
comic.
on it, but it's
Yeah,
inspired.
yeah, inspired by it's a Neil Gaiman comic, I believe.
Yep.
I have
Hmm.
read part. I don't think I've read the whole thing, but I have started it. It's an interesting concept. Like, what if the Avengers were medieval? And I think even in that comic book, there is something that ties into why is everything like this? Why, like, something from the future has come back to the past and changed
Hmm.
things. Um, because you don't learn what the what if in this one is until the end, which is what if Captain America hit the time stone when he's fighting Thanos, which I thought was the most interesting part of this, which is sad because I really enjoy, like, I wanted to enjoy this episode a lot when I saw that this was on the list. So I
Same,
was like, I really want to see this. Um,
same.
and if it had
Yeah.
just been the Avengers of that time exploring it, I think it would have been a little bit more interesting for me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I wonder how much of the Captain Carter stuff wasn't supposed to be Captain Carter, but was supposed to be Star Lord T'Challa, because I know that originally they had more plans for him in season 2, but sadly we all know Chadwick Boseman passed away, so they had to scrap those plans. So I'm really wondering how much of the season was going to be focused on him instead of Captain Carter, or if they were going to team up again in
Hmm.
these. So
Yeah, I will. I didn't really care for the episode. Honestly, I thought it was really messy. I liked how it started with with Loki trying to do a play and everybody was just bored as hell, and I was like, oh, okay, we're in this timeline. This is interesting. But the more it went on, and the two different sides, and Happy Hogan being part of like a villain, and it was just I just thought it was really messy. And then the Captain Carter stuff came on, and she's having a conversation with
Mm-hmm.
the Watcher, which I thought was interesting. But then I was just like, okay, it's another Captain Carter
The,
episode.
the
But
weirdest thing for the Happy Hogan stuff for me was, why does he have his powers from that one episode of What If?
yeah, it just felt random that they pulled that
Yeah.
in. So, and that was kind of some of the messy stuff I really just didn't get. And but then Steve Rogers being a man at a time again was interesting. And when
Mm-hmm.
that twist happened, I was like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. And that is actually a really cool thing. But it was at the end of the episode of an episode that I really didn't care for. So I was just like, okay, well, I mean, that's a cool way to end it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't like make me want to go back and rewatch the episode again. It was kind of it was definitely a throwaway episode for me,
Yeah.
as cool as it was, or the
Uh, speak,
concept was.
Speaking of episodes I don't need to go back and watch again, then there's the finale. What if Strange Supreme intervened?
Yeah, man.
What I liked about season one's finale was it felt like it was building towards that. Like when you have the Watcher assembling every like heroes from each episode that we had and putting a team together, it made sense for that to be the finale. This
Mm-hmm.
finale seemed very rushed together. Like, oh hey, we're gonna show Strange Supreme in 2 episodes to tease the finale, but
Mm-hmm.
it just seemed like a mess. Like, let's just throw every villain ever imaginable into this reality and make that the finale.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a collage of so much stuff, and Captain Carter is the center figure, and then they bring back uh Kahori from seasons or from episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that initially that's the character that Captain Carter is sent to go get. But again, like Carter is just so willing to do whatever Strange wants and not question anything initially. And but the ruse is up pretty quickly, and then it's her and Kahori versus Supreme, and just letting chaos loose. And how many weapons and powers can we give Captain Carter by the end of it? And it was definitely a swarm of animation stuff. It was fun to look at, but it wasn't as impactful, or didn't feel like the stakes were as high as the finale from the first one, and the season finale of season one definitely felt like more stuff was building up to it, and it was interesting to see that that's the direction they went. And it's just kind of felt like, oh, we got to do something at the end, so let's cap it with this. And yeah, I was kind of let down by it. It just wasn't very interesting to me, honestly, which
Yeah,
is crazy because I loved Strange Supreme in first season. So I just thought it was a little lackluster in
and
as a finale for this one.
they did a little bit of redeeming him, and it kind of like ruins the growth that he had in season one, where he learns
Yeah.
his lesson about not being able to save Christine. Um, and then you have him be the villain again. Like that just kind of felt redundant to me. Like, I don't need to see this again.
What was his plan? His plan was like to bring all of the superpowered bad guys, and then
To
somehow,
like take their power and then be strong enough to build a world for Christine.
yeah. I
Like
was like,
it,
okay, all right.
even for Marvel, it was a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but there will be more What If season 3 has been confirmed. There is a teaser out from the "What If the Winter Soldier and Red Guardian Teamed Up" episode, which
Hmm.
you said you got to see, right?
I did. Yeah.
What is
Couldn't
a
tell. Was that Stranger Things
David
voicing
Harbour?
that?
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
really tell if that was his voice or not. So,
Yeah, you
yeah,
got David Harbour joining the cast. I think that episode was supposed to be part of this season, but got pushed for
it's definitely
reasons.
felt like it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so my question for you then is, what is the one what if storyline that you want to see in season 3 that we have not seen yet?
I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff out there that could be adapted. Um, I know there's a lot of people saying, why aren't we seeing X-Men in this? And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
But
The main
um,
reason for that being the X-Men are off the table for what if until they make their live
mhm,
action debut.
mhm.
So
I imagine the same way with why we're not seeing a lot of Spider-Man content because that's not that's legal and a rights issue. Because I feel like with all the
actually, it's not. From my
it's not.
understanding, Marvel has the rights to Spider-Man television appearances because they were able to use him in the zombies episode, but that's why he had the same costume that he had on at from the Disney World
Mm.
attraction uh, or Disneyland.
But like
Um,
they couldn't have an episode with Andrew Garfield and Venom if they
oh
wanted
man,
to,
what I
right?
love that's high on
I
my
mean, that would be
list.
great.
What
That
what
that'd be great in either format, in live action or
That, I had
animated.
my answer, but I think now my answer is: what if Andrew Garfield actually was Spider-Man in the MCU and joined
Yeah.
after the Avengers? Like, what if Oscorp Tower was in the in Avengers and
Hmm.
Stark Tower was in Amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Um, my
That'd
go-to,
be great.
my go-to is still: what if the other half was snapped? Like, what if it
Oh,
just
sure,
flipped it? So you can have
sure.
Spider-Man and Black Panther and all of these characters work together. Um, it'll be
That would
interesting.
be an interesting. Yeah.
It would be difficult to do now without Chadwick Boseman. Um,
Mm-hmm.
now that I've said it out loud, but you still get Peter Parker interacting with Shuri. Um, it'd be
Mm-hmm.
very interesting to see, like, what is the Peter Parker dynamic when if Tony Stark is gone. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and how quickly do the Guardians fall apart without Nebula or Rocket?
True. True.
um,
Uh, Honestly, I want more way out of left field stuff.
yeah,
Like episode one, I thought the Nebula Blade Runner episode was fantastic. Thought it pushed the envelope of storytelling with it being
yeah,
a little more adult than some of these other episodes. And yeah, I want more of that. I mean, sure, adapt some fun stories and give us some alternate takes on things we already have because that formula usually works. But throw in a couple of these random, just totally detached stories that are just inspired by something and is cool aesthetic with a character that we normally wouldn't see in that situation. And yeah, I like that a lot.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully, we'll get that season next year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's move on to today's other topic, the other Marvel series that dropped, the Marvel Spotlight Echo, starring Aquia Fox and Vincent D'Onofrio. This is a spin-off of Hawkeye and Daredevil
Mm-hmm.
and Daredevil. I'm just gonna say, yeah. Um, this was the first entry into the Marvel Spotlight series this is the first show under the Marvel Spotlight banner, which means it is how they're addressing a lot of their shows going forward, which is going to be very character centric, not being afraid to go to an M rating. Um, this was 5
Is
episodes.
that it? Is that it? Like, I really don't understand what spotlight means
That's
because it's not. I mean, it's still canon.
yeah.
It's not. It's not separate.
From the Marvel television series Wikipedia, Marvel Studios announced Marvel Spotlight banner for select series that focus on grounded, character driven stories and less impacting on the larger MCU narrative. Uh, Head of streaming Brad Winderbaum explained that it was created during post production on Echo as a way to indicate to audiences they do not need to watch any other MCU projects to understand Spotlight series, as is the
Okay.
case with reading Marvel comics.
Wasn't that the whole point of the Disney Plus series to begin with?
I think
Like,
it was, but they quickly got away from that as soon as Wanda was the villain in
yeah, yeah.
uh, Doctor Strange. Um, but looking at this from that standpoint, like you do not have to see Hawkeye to understand who Maya Lopez is in this show. You do not have to see uh, Daredevil to understand who Wilson Fisk is. It helps. It gives you a little bit of extra credit if you know how
Mm-hmm.
twisted that character is. But there's also the interesting dynamic of if you watch this show not knowing who Wilson Fisk is, there's that reveal of what actually happened to his father. That's a reveal for the character and yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you watch
Mm-hmm.
it not having seen anything with Kingpin in it before, you get that interesting dynamic of, okay, this guy's twisted, but I don't know how twisted. But then you get that reveal, and it's like, oh no, that's not
Mm-hmm.
go. That's not do that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is the first thing that in a long time for the MCU that you can just watch without having any prior knowledge. And I think
Well, it helps that the first episode, a lot of it was uh, rehashing things and or extended versions of scenes or just direct scenes from
yeah,
previous material to pad that episode out. And I usually don't care for that, but the way they did it, uh, it worked for that episode. It was very much like, okay, and then this happened, all getting up to where we are now post Hawkeye. um, I did like that. I thought episode one was a very strong episode, but it was kind of like a, and then we're gonna do this type of show after episode one, which was kind of sad for me. But I thought it was a definite strong way to start the show.
the episode one was very interesting because it does do a lot of recapping to the point where my
Mm-hmm.
wife and I had rewatched Daredevil. I rewatched it. She watched it for the first time, like the day up until the day before we started watching this. We like finished the finale of Daredevil and then right into Echo. Um, and we wanted to watch Hawkeye because we had this plan months in advance. Like we're gonna watch Hawkeye again before Echo comes out, just so we can watch the Fisk stuff. And we didn't get a chance to watch Hawkeye. But after the first episode, I just turned to her and was like, "Glad we didn't watch Hawkeye because they covered the whole thing. They covered everything we need to know for
Yeah,
this story."
they took a lot of
Um,
scenes from Hawkeye
yeah,
and just placed them in the linear storyline to get you to where we were going. There was new scenes as well. It wasn't a
yeah,
complete flashback episode, but it was a quick linear, like here she is at this point in her life, here she is at the Hawkeye point, and here she is now, and with some added scenes that were fun. I'm having a hard time not talking spoilers about this. This isn't a show like What If that we need to go episode by episode,
no,
but I feel like we need to get our spoiler-free thoughts out of the way, or at least the rating out of the way, and then just go ahead and jump into spoilers.
okay, yeah. Do you want to go ahead and give your rating of brilliant or lazy?
Yeah, I would give it uh uh yeah, I would give it lazy.
Okay,
Honestly, I think there is some good stuff in this show that I want to talk about, but I think there's a lot of like, why did they go in this direction? Why did they feel they needed to add this onto the character? Um, yeah, why is this the route they went? And especially when you have it's interesting that we had the Kahori character in What If season two, and how interesting that character was for not having a lot of material that it was based on that we know about. It sounded like it was a new character. Echo, while I didn't know much about her, and I imagine a lot of people don't know much about her, did have pre-existing material that a lot of people were excited to see that transfer over, and to
mm-hmm.
see what they ended up doing instead. Um, I was like, why? What writer thought that that was a good idea, and what producer was like, oh yeah, let's do this, for no reason whatsoever. So I would give it lazy as much as I did like certain parts of the show.
I think this rarely happens on the show. I'm gonna go brilliant.
All right.
There are moments in this show that I I I think work very well for the character. Um, I think just the idea of this working as a spotlight where you don't have to have seen anything else, you can go into it fresh, works very well for what they were doing, even if it was something they came up with in post. Um, I think they nail the character of Wilson Fisk. Um, he's menacing. He's mysterious to a point in this show. I think they handle Echo's. Um, they make some choices with Maya's deafnesses. I thought were interesting. Like there's a moment for a fight scene that I'm like, oh, that makes sense given her character. Like that's what she would choose given her situation, um,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll dive into then. I like this family storyline. Um, I also watched this on my 100-inch screen projector with like good speakers, and like it felt like I was watching a long movie. And then I unironically right after this I watched the 3.5 hour long Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a weird double feature. But
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this show. I think they did the character justice. I want to see more of her now. Which after Hawkeye, I was like, I don't know if I need to see more a show of her, but I want to see more of her now. Um, I think they did some interesting stuff with Wilson Fisk and even Daredevil. Like he's in it for a moment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting to see a street level hero and villain outside of New York City, which
Mm-hmm.
is not something I thought I would see ever. So, because you can't take Spider-Man and put him in the middle of what state is this?
Uh, I
Oklahoma.
forgot where she goes.
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
yeah.
Okay.
You can't put Spider-Man in a small city in a small town like this because what's he gonna do? Just run and jump? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. There's a lot of that I liked. Yeah, I think it was brilliant.
All right.
With that
Well,
being said,
it had
let's
to happen sometime. We had to
yeah
disagree on something sometime,
yeah
so that works.
let's jump into spoilers for Echo.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I was talking about is there's a fight in a skating rink, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Where's my like Kingpin's guys come in like, okay, where's Maya?" And no one knows where she is, and she makes herself known by playing Dragula by Rob Zombie, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's such a weird choice. Like my wife loved it because she's into that music, and as soon as it came on, like I just look over at her and she's like, ah, um, but like it makes sense because it's such a bass heavy song. So somebody who is deaf, that would be the choice that they go to because that's what they would know. Like they would have a reaction to that, being able to feel the bass shake the room. And it was just a great fight sequence. I think the fight sequences in this alone were very well done. Her the choreography seems very real. They do a great job of incorporating um, her prosthetic throughout the show. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I felt kind of like how I felt with Shang-Chi. First of all, I really like Shang-Chi as a movie, but in terms of the action, I thought the action was more fun and creative and awesome up front when it was more
Mm-hmm.
hand-to-hand combat than when it got more into the mystical power sets towards the end. I thought that those fight scenes were less interesting and less cool, from a visual standpoint than the hand-to-hand combat in the beginning. And I kind of felt the same way with this. Echo is a very different character in this show than she is in Hawkeye and than she is in the comics. Because generally in the comics, she was just kind of like a Daredevil esque character. She had a disability, but that honed her other senses, and she just became this awesome fighter, similar to Daredevil. In this, she has they tie in the Choctaw Nation history, which is an interesting history. Like that is a definite like part of their culture in real life. But they tie that in to give her straight up powers, and I just thought that wasn't necessary. I really liked I from the little bit that we got of her in the Hawkeye show, I thought she was interesting. I didn't know if it was necessarily going to be enough for a full show, but the first episode of this season, it sold me on that. I was like, I'd love to see a Daredevil esque show in in the city with this character, especially when they Kingpin straight up sets her up to test her out. Like I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
throw you and in a room full of bad guys, and that Daredevil will likely show up and see how you survive. And she holds her own. That version of Daredevil we get is kind of a mix between the She-Hulk Daredevil and the Netflix series Daredevil in terms of fighting styles and wit and everything. And I like that. It makes me a little excited for Born Again. Uh, but then we take that character that has a pretty cool episode and we throw her in Oklahoma or wherever she was, and then it's a show about her getting powers. And I just didn't need that. I didn't need to see this badass fighter that has a grudge and an interesting past with the Kingpin using her hand to slow down a train, and stuff like that. I didn't need powers for this character. And I thought that once that started becoming a thing, I was just like, why? I slowly started losing interest. And we had cool scenes like the roller rink scene. But then and we had other neat things when Vincent D'Onofrio was on the screen. I was there for it. I liked what he did, what he brought to the table. I love their dynamic. But yeah, I just the more and more that they included the powers, and then her sharing the powers, and just like the family element was fun. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
overbearing like other properties we've gotten lately, but I just thought that it derailed the show and the character for me, and I thought the character was less interesting with the powers than she
It,
was without.
it's very interesting to me that a lot of these Disney Plus shows have taken the time to deep dive into the family element because you don't really get that in the movies. Um,
Mm.
Ms. Marvel did it. She Hulk
Yep.
did it to an extent. If I had a nickel for every Disney Plus show that ended with a family barbecue, I'd have at least two nickels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
I enjoyed the family dynamic here because it shows like they do a good job of establishing her family dynamics with her grandmother and her cousin.
Yeah.
Um, I still
It
don't
wasn't
understand.
like over the top, like
It
Blue
wasn't.
Beetle's family involvement,
Yeah.
other than one scene. It wasn't like ridiculous. The family made sense in the environment that they
Yeah.
were in.
Um,
Yeah.
I still have not seen Blue Beetle yet, but I
Oh,
need
well,
to.
you're not missing much.
Yeah. Um, I my favorite moment of this, and it's something that I thought about the whole first episode where Wilson Fisk is like, "We are family," and like he has that interpreter there the whole time. Like, if you really cared for her at all, you would learn American Sign Language. And she calls him out on that. Like, you've never learned how to sign. Like, what? It's like,
Yeah,
yes, thank you. Um, I thought I think seeing Kingpin lean into technology as somebody who
that was
grew up
neat.
watching the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s where Kingpin's like the main bad guy with Alistair Smythe building all the spider slayers and all that. I was like, "Oh boy, if this is where Kingpin's going, I'm here for it. Like, let's
Mm.
go." Um, so I'm excited to see that aspect of the character come into play now with the MCU. Um, I think D'Onofrio as Kingpin is probably the best casting they've ever done in the MCU, and yeah, like having rewatched Daredevil again before this, like I'm this got me so hyped for Daredevil Born Again. Whenever
Yeah.
that show comes out, I am here for it.
Well, like I said, anytime he's on the screen, it's great. And when he's not on the screen, I'm like, where is he? Like we know he didn't die at the end of Hawkeye. Just where is
Mm-hmm.
he? And I liked um I liked that the tech thing wasn't necessarily about him connecting more with Maya. It was more so that he didn't have to, like he had that interpreter for a while and then was like, she's technically heard a bunch. Like, we need to kill her. And that was
Mm-hmm.
part of Maya's, you know, getting Maya to step up and stuff like that. So I did like that, but then it would make sense that he wouldn't do that again,
Yeah.
that he wouldn't get another interpreter that then he would have to worry about being a loose end. So he goes after this tech, and the tech was cool, and it wasn't outrageous to think that it's possible because we do have a lot of translation tech right now that is similar. So
Mm-hmm.
I liked that. I liked that addition. That was cool. Um, but then he did end up bringing another interpreter in for the for the finale. uh yeah, they didn't bring that tech back, but I did like his involvement. And yeah, like he wanted her, but at the same time he still had his power as his priority. And if she wasn't going to go along with that, that's fine. He was going to take out her loved ones, like he did her dad and stuff like that. and
Yeah.
and I like that. But again, like the power set thing, I was like, can't we just, could this story not have been richer as just like, did the power set deepen her character? Did it enrich the story? I mean, it gave us a reason for the flashbacks to her native people, but I just don't think it enriched the story by the end of it. I don't think it made the character better. I was just like, I feel like the character was more interesting when she was just this person that overcame a lot of obstacles and became this badass, not and then got powers randomly, and she can also just give those to any other people in her family when she needs a team up. And we get to see
Yeah.
Grandma, punching people out, and that did remind me of Blue Beetle. Spoilers: the grandma in there is very action driven as well, and I thought it was just as much over the top
I
and
think
unnecessary.
it the ending with her grandmother and cousin getting the powers too, like, plays into the family dynamic of it. Like, if it's
Well,
a
there's a
trait
lot of memes with Vin Diesel in the background of that scene. Yeah.
that's I haven't seen those memes. What I have seen though is comparing it to the finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Oh, okay.
because there are some similarities there with, like, Aang
Yeah.
and the Fire Lord. Like, have you seen Avatar?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of similarities there with, like, the hands on the face and, like, purging the mind and healing. And um
Mm-hmm.
but I think if the power set is one that is passed down through the generations of that family, it would make sense that they all would have it. It might be it might be dormant in them, but they, like, it would be um in them as well. So, and it
Mm-hmm.
would echo out of her and into them. Like, it bounces off the walls and into them and all of that. Like an
Mm-hmm.
echo.
Yeah,
Um,
I got what you're
yeah,
doing there.
yeah. I never know.
Yeah, I did
Uh,
like the hammer scene with Vincent D'Onofrio. Like basically like saying, "I took out my dad with this hammer. I'm kind of a father figure to you. If this is what you need to do, you go.
yeah,
I thought that was great. Again, I thought those scenes were so much richer than the power set scenes. But
yeah.
yeah,
I So you could have used more D'Onofrio in this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I loved every part of him. I loved every part of their relationship. Um, yeah, I mean, I
I
liked there was another member of the family, Henry. I thought he was an interesting character that you
her
know,
uncle, right?
her uncle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked that. Um there was one villain who was just like Dollar Tree, the guy from Logan and Predator. You
Yeah.
know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know who you're talking about. I forget his
This
name
Dollar
though.
Tree Boyd Holbrook.
Yeah.
Um, like I'm like you all down to the facial hair. I'm like you guys just couldn't get Boyd Holbrook in this, so you went to the store and got the discount version.
He was too busy filming Dial of Destiny. Um,
I guess. Yeah.
um, I'm very interested to see what they do with this Marvel Spotlight idea going forward because I don't see any of the shows that we've seen already being changed to spotlights. I can see the special presentations like Werewolf by Night becoming
Mhm.
spotlights. Uh,
So
what
what does
character?
that mean for me? I'm sorry,
No,
you were
no, you
going
go. No,
you were
you go
going
ahead.
into a
No,
question.
you,
I just wonder what that means for Maya. Does that mean we're not going to see her in Born Again? Because she went into this spotlight tier. Because there's more stuff at the end that's teases what Vincent D'Onofrio will be in
mm-hmm.
Born Again. But the whole Maya thing, like there's so many like there was multiple scenes in the show where she's just riding off on her bike, but then the next scene is her showing up at the barbecue, so there was no sense of her coming back to a life in the city or anything
I
like that. So
I can see
do
her
you get the
coming.
sense that she's coming back, or
I don't think they would do a whole show like this without bringing her back, like without having a plan for her down the line. I don't know when we'll see her again, but if they're
Mhm.
going the way I think they are with Fisk, it would make sense if that you're going to have to do um, a team up of some sort to bring him down because I don't think it's just going to be Daredevil who is going to be fighting Wilson Fisk for the foreseeable future. I think you're going to bring in a um, or you're going to swing in some other characters to help fight him as well. Um,
I like the mayor tease because there's a
yeah,
lot of comic stories around that I wonder. And I've already heard about the shakeup for Born Again. I think they've like the first 7 or 8 episodes, and they're doing a hard like, okay, we made some choices that aren't working out. We need to bring back some cast
yeah.
from the Netflix, down to the point that I think they've all but said that the Netflix thing is now canon, like it's no longer hinted. Like,
It is a all of the Netflix shows, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Defenders, and Iron Fist and Punisher are all canon now. If you look in the Disney Plus section of the MCU timeline, they are all listed there.
yeah,
Um, which is a bit of a
that's going to
mess.
affect some different things
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
The only shows that are not part of that timeline now are Agents of Shield and Agent Carter.
Well, I
Both
don't ever see
both
that happening.
both of which have their own issues with being part of the official timeline. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, those are officially canon now because yeah, they just are.
I did read something the other day about how they are definitely bringing back Karen now and Foggy.
Yep.
Um, so, but they're but from everything, and granted, this is all speculation, and I did see that Vincent D'Onofrio was like, "Stop, feeding into this. Like, changes are made all the time. This isn't as big of a deal as it is." But there was at least one article that made it seem like people were freaking out about how lackluster the first 7 episodes were, and they had to do a hard either rewrite or direction change, and
Yeah.
now they're bringing these back, and fine. I mean, I already think Vincent D'Onofrio was a step up in Echo than he was in Hawkeye. Like, I think there was some criticism of him in Hawkeye. It was less about what he was wearing because I know those were, teases to comics, but he was a little different in
Mm-hmm.
Hawkeye, and he was definitely more menacing and more intelligent in Echo. and that feels like a better transition into Born Again. So um, yeah, if they need to do a hard stop and be like, we're fucking this up, and we need to take the wins, even if it wasn't necessarily our wins initially. But if we can build on that, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to make it your own? You got 3 seasons of Daredevil that people universally say are fan fucking tastic.
Mm-hmm.
Why do what you did with Star Wars and throw those all in the trash and try to make your own? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for Born Again.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of Star Wars, I forgot to bring this up during the What If. There are rumors now that Disney is pursuing a Star Wars version of What If. What do you think of that? So you could see a storyline of what if Obi-Wan Kenobi died to Darth Maul and not Qui-Gon Jinn?
I mean, sure, those would be interesting. Would I rather? Would I would rather see Legends adaptions.
Yeah,
Whether those are, I would kill for an animated um, uh, Heir to the Empire series. I think that would just be
yeah.
insane. I still think what's his name that plays Winter Soldier would be a great Luke if
Sebastian
we
Stan.
needed. Yeah, I still think he would kill it. And but yeah, and we've seen what, remember that TIE fighter anime Star Wars thing that came out like 10, 15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
It was like that was a cool short, and I'd love to see stuff like that. We kind of got tastes of those things in this Star Wars, was
Yeah,
it Visions
yeah,
that came out. So I'd much rather see that. I mean, I'd watch What Ifs too. I think that'd be fun
yeah,
too. But I think more people would be like, we're never gonna get some of these legends stories, and even if they came in short versions, it'd be fun to see some stuff like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
So last thing I want to touch on with Echo before we wrap this up is what do you think is next for the Marvel Spotlight banner? Who would you like to see a story focused on going forward in
Mm-hmm.
the MCU? Because I think this is the perfect way to introduce the X-Men. Take a 5 episode series, deep dive into one of the characters who hasn't had a feature film series, hasn't been prominent in the film. So you can do like a Gambit standalone series, tell the story of whatever the MCU version of Magneto is going to be. Do something like that in this
Mm-hmm.
format, so you can deep dive into the characters and then add them to a team down the line.
I mean, yeah, you could definitely do that. Yeah, I think I think Punisher. I think if the Netflix series are canon now, it would be a good way to bring those back without having to make them a huge part of the MCU. Just doing especially with this 5 little episode thing. You could do a Frank Castle series in Spotlight, because at first I thought when they were honing so much on this is the first mature series. First of all, it was a hard PG-13 at most. It wasn't. People are saying this is an R-rated show. It wasn't really. I mean, there was some elevated fight scenes.
There was more
It
blood than
was
you would normally see.
it was more blood than you would normally see, sure, in the MCU, but it still wasn't R-rated to me. I didn't feel like the Punisher prison scene at any point in Echo. Uh, but if they were selling it, because at first I thought Spotlight meant like the MCU's version of Marvel Max. Do you remember when Marvel did the
Yeah,
comic series? And that was like their R-rated storylines, and there was a lot of Punisher stuff in that. And I think Punisher or Elektra or a lot of the Daredevil stuff, that would be a fun way to kind of bring them back in a small way, without having to have them have their own bigger show or cameo on Daredevil or stuff like that. Yeah, you could do anything with Spotlight, honestly.
yeah,
I wonder if they're going to keep it with are all the spotlights going to be mature, or is that just
I
happens to be this one?
I don't know. I don't think they all need to be mature. I think that just happened to be what the show they were going to do was going to be. Um, anyway, so they just kept it that way.
No.
Um, yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with that banner going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I
Me
think that
too. Because I don't really know what to expect from it. I think the mature thing was a marketing tactic, honestly,
yeah,
more than anything else, because it wasn't really, they were. I mean, just like they put the Daredevil scene in one of the commercials for it, and it's damn near the full scene because it wasn't that long in the show. So
yeah.
I think
I saw bits and pieces of the fight, but I didn't see the whole thing going into it. Like I avoided the trailers for this except for the teaser because that was kind of what sold me on the show and kind of made it deceiving in how much Kingpin was going to be in it. But
mhm.
it still worked for me. Like I'm happy with it. So um,
Again, I called it lazy, but I did like parts of it,
mhm.
and I wouldn't mind seeing more of Echo. And if she has a cameo in the Daredevil show, I'd be perfectly cool with that because I think that's a better element for her than the roller rinks of Oklahoma. Um, but I came out of this just more excited for Daredevil. I can't wait for Daredevil. I'm glad that somebody at Disney is like, hey, we need to listen to the people and change our mind and make Daredevil canon and embrace the good things that we have the ability to embrace. Just because they didn't write it doesn't. I mean, I am sure if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was an Emmy Award winning, amazing show that everybody holds up on a pedestal like they do with Heroes Season 1. I'm sure Kevin Feige would, say, yes, let's bring that in, you know, but it wasn't a good show.
I don't even think Agents of Shield made it to the praise level of Hero season 4. So
Yeah, no, it didn't. I liked it. I liked elements of it. I liked seeing more
yeah,
of Phil Coulson and everything. But yeah,
that
Kevin
show
Feige hated that show.
got so crazy by the end, and it got good, really good by the end when they started doing time travel stuff and playing
Mm-hmm.
with the more sci-fi elements of everything. It was very interesting, but yeah, that show is a mixed bag. Um, Looking ahead at what else we have coming from the MCU this year, TV show wise, it's Agatha in the Diaries or whatever
When's
they're
that coming
calling
out? They have a release for that?
fall 24. So around Halloween, we should be getting that.
That's the next Disney Plus Marvel thing? Is
Well,
fall?
we also have X-Men 97, which should be coming
Yeah.
this spring. They've also
Mm-hmm.
announced Eyes of Wakanda, which is an animated Black Panther series. Um, it travels through It follows throughout Wakandan history. Brave warriors have been tasked with to travel the
Mm-hmm.
world retrieving dangerous vibranium artifacts. This is their story. Spider-Man freshman year has changed its title to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which should supposedly be coming out this year, which will be another
Mm-hmm.
version of Daredevil that we'll get to see because he's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe Ironheart. I think they officially pushed
No,
that back
I
to
heard
next
that's
year.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Which
supposed
is
to be this year.
insane. It's done.
It's done,
Apparently
and
it's done.
I don't
Is it
know.
waiting on Armor Wars? Like, did they say that connected more with Armor Wars? And
It might,
when's
but
when's that coming out?
that not this year.
It's so
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
so
we're
crazy.
getting a little bit of a break of Marvel stuff this year, which I'm
Yeah.
okay with. Next year is going to
Coming
be
off like a
insane,
barren
though.
landscape.
Next year is going to
Yeah.
be oversaturated, and I feel like
If it
they're
all comes out next year.
if it all comes out next year. But if we have to wait another 2 years for Daredevil again, like it's like what? Like come on, like let's tell the stories. Um,
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're
I
gonna get a Blade recasting before we get some of these shows that come out.
I feel like we're gonna get a Spider-Man recasting before we get some of these shows. Um, but yeah, because
Yeah,
Tom Holland's just gonna age out of it. Like he's gonna be geriatric, and
yeah.
it'll be easier for them to put Andrew Garfield back in the suit. Um,
he is gonna look different by the time he comes back on screen. Tom
yeah,
Holland's gonna look different,
yeah,
and maybe they'll play into that. You know, they'll be like, fast forward a couple of years, he's been on his own for a while.
yeah.
Yeah,
In
they could make it work.
college,
Yeah,
struggling to make it work, having identity crises, and
yeah, the
fighting Doctor
stresses of
Octavius. Yeah,
living alone in a New York apartment.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm still eagerly waiting for Deadpool. Speaking of, I mean, I think it'd be just like we got a nod to what was that other Marvel series that did not do well? The Inhumans.
Hmm.
Got a nod to them in the Doctor Strange movie. I would love a small nod to Agents of Shield and Deadpool. I think that would be hilarious.
I,
it's it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
yeah,
That's all. I'm saying.
we'll see what happens. Like if nothing, they're gonna definitely revisit and nod to uh X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh
So
yeah. I mean, I know
which
it's
they've
going to
already
be more
done
than that. Yeah. If what was that? Yeah, it was Deadpool 2.
too.
Yeah, the credits sequence of Deadpool 2. I could watch a whole 2-hour movie of that. You know, like I know Deadpool 3 is going to be more than that, but if it was interspersed with so much of that, I would be
I
kidding.
I'm going to say I don't think it might. I don't think it will be much more than that. I think it is just going to be 2 hours of him just going through the Fox Marvel stuff and be like, "Hey, Ben Affleck's Daredevil."
Right.
Um,
That would be fine by me. That would
yeah,
be fine.
that is
Yeah.
actually going to be the next Marvel topic that we talk about. Is probably Deadpool 3 in July. So we've got 5 months, 6 months of things that we need to fill this show with. So, um, yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about some teasers that come out at the Super Bowl next month, and get back into the rotation of doing this show semi regularly, which we say
Yeah.
every time. But the holidays were crazy, but we got both of these topics in on one slightly
Worked.
oversized
It
episode.
worked. We
It
were gonna
worked.
do what if at one point, and then me and you just both got busy,
Yeah.
and it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. I'll be interested to see uh what how these shows affect Disney Plus going. I don't think they're gonna do another 9 p.m. drop of an entire 5 episodes. That was a weird thing. If they were gonna drop it all in one day, why did they wait till the evening? It was weird. The release
That's
drop.
yeah. It's weird.
Did they expect people to watch it until like 1 a.m.? Like that didn't make sense.
that's just how they've been doing their drops though. Like they've done that for Ahsoka
I know
and
that, but that was for one episode, not for a full season drop. Like
I don't know.
I was waiting to watch it. I'm like, what? It's the day. It's the day, right? Yeah, but it drops at 9 p.m. All 5 episodes drop at 9 p.m. It's weird.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah. Um.
And that's probably why I'm just saying. I know I watched it over the next couple of days. I know you waited to like Friday, Saturday to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that affected when people watched it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, yeah. My main thing was we needed to finish Daredevil before we started this. So.
Oh yeah.
Because my wife hadn't seen all of Daredevil, so we finished our rewatch of that, and then dived into this. So. I think
I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but we're going to have to talk about something other than Marvel, and then sooner or later, I mean, pretty soon, a couple months from now, we'll be in Winchester.
Yeah.
Right? I'm buying tickets for that this year, so I'm going to be there in person. We got to figure out.
So come out to the Victims and Villains Horrific Hope Film Festival in Winchester, Virginia, which the dates are escaping me right now. But it's in April.
Maybe we can do a horror episode for that.
Maybe. Maybe we can do a live one there in front of a crowd. Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking it up. That is April 5th and 6th. So.
Yeah. So come on out to Winchester, Virginia at the Alamo Draft House for that. We will be there along with the rest of the Victims and Villains crew. Check out Victims and Villains for other great podcasts and movie reviews, and mental health resources. We are a mental health podcast and a lot of great resources on our website. So check that out. Until next time, for Brilliant But Lazy, I'm Alan.
I'm Josh.
And we will see you next time.